Hi, welcome to my other show. This is Muse, and I am Susan Rushton, and this is the show on which I get to talk to people who answer the Muse, who are visited by the Muse, in other words, artists of all stripes. And we have three artists of various stripes here today. We are all writers, and once a year, I get to participate in the question and answer thing about, I get to talk about myself as well as learn about others. And you get to hear me talk about myself as well. So today, these are wonderful writers. These are good friends of mine and of each other. I have, to my immediate left, your immediate right, I have June Gillam, who has been I think you've been a student. You haven't been a student, but I've edited some of your work.
Right.
Yes. And she is available, information about her is available at junegillam.com, JUNEGILLAM.com. Thank you for joining me, June.
Happy to be here.
Good. And my other guest is Robin Martinez Rice, who is a intense author, also a person whose work I have edited, which it makes me.
And I took a class from you.
And you took a class from me. Her website, robinmartinezrice.com, and you can, both of these women and I have books available for learning about and to purchase, and you can get mine if you give me a call, 878-7938, or rushton@suddenlink.net. Okay, so the way this works is that we have a bunch of questions, and each of us gets to talk about these questions, and I get to start. The question is, what do you write? At the moment, I write an opinion column for the Auburn Journal, which takes up a lot of my time. And I have a collection of columns that I've 105 of some of my favorites, and you would think that something that had these things that had already been written would be a snap to gather and edit. No, it took a long time. It's a lot of work. And it's fascinating to see your stuff in print. I've also written a book for young adults, which I wrote before Harry Potter came out. And Harry Potter just throws these people, she throws these kids into the situation with no explanation. And I had lots of explanations, so I have to rewrite that. Okay. All right. So, June, what do you write?
Well, I started out writing poetry, then I went to short stories, then I went to novels, then I went to a PhD dissertation.
That's a lot of writing. That's a lot of writing.
Then I went to a how-to book that I'm using for my students in my literature class.
Where's your literature class?
It's at Delta College in Stockton.
Okay.
It's online though.
All right. Online. So anybody, if you're registered at Delta College in Stockton, you can.
Right. I have students from the East Coast sometimes.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Robin, what do you write?
I write all kinds of fiction. I write historic fiction, which I am discovering is actually called historic fantasy because there's always a bit of magic and mystery in it. And then I write short stories, which I put together into collections and publish. And like you, I have this piece of work sitting there in a file, which is a series for children that someday will be completed.
I remember that. Yeah. Okay, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I hope you complete it.
Adults liked it a lot, kids not so much, which is why it's back on the shelf for
Okay.
a while.
Okay. Okay, that's what we write. So, June, pick out a question.
It's fun. What do you look for in your writing?
What do you look for in your writing?
Oh, I answer first.
Yeah. Or if you want somebody else to do it and you can come back
I
to.
look for suspense and conflict. Conflict's very hard for me to write, so I'm always trying to create it and trying to notice where it is. And another thing I look for is clarity for readers.
Oh, clarity.
Clarity. Well, that I learned that from you, Susan.
Well, of course.
When you came to the Gold Country Writers group a long time ago when we were at Depot Bay, you emphasized the importance of keeping our reader in mind. So clarity to me is number one.
Hey. You learn fast. Thanks. Robin.
I don't look for clarity at all. My writing is very self-satisfying. I'm doing it for myself, and hopefully other people will enjoy the same thing I enjoy. But that said, I do try to learn new skills and be a good writer, so that people, I like the kudos. I like people to say, yeah, I stayed up all night reading that book. That's kind of what I look for.
Yeah. Okay. What do I look for in my writing? I want things to move. I want things to be. I don't want to confuse anybody. I don't want to have anybody wonder what, huh? But
Right.
you say sometimes that's a good thing. It's having people say, huh? Wait a minute, maybe I should read further to figure this out. Okay. So, but I want clarity. I want the reader to want to continue reading.
Forget about the huh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But I'll think about that. That's something to think about, huh? Okay, Robin.
Large enough to read without my glasses. What advice do you have for other writers? Take lots and lots of classes. It's what I've done. I started writing when I retired, and
Which was how long ago?
6 or 7 years, 6 years. I took Susan's class. I took online classes through Stanford and UCLA. I go to workshops, and by just continually learning is what I like to do. The other thing that I like to do that I would advise people to do is get feedback on your writing. You can think it's wonderful and makes sense, and then you have someone read it and it doesn't make sense at all. And I use what's called a beta reader. June is one of my beta readers.
What's a beta reader?
A beta reader is when you think you're almost finished and you have someone read the book and they get to comment and critique as much as they want. And it's a good way to see what doesn't work, see what doesn't need to be there.
And sometimes you can pay attention to your beta reader. You can say, oh, yeah, I wanted that to be clear, but this, it's as clear as I want it to be.
Right,
Yeah.
right. The
So
good thing
I'm
about
not gonna
critiques
make
and
those
beta
changes.
readers, you don't have to make any of the changes. Yeah, this particular book, the Blue Clay Pot that June read for me, I had 5 beta readers, 4 liked it, 1 hated it.
Uh-huh.
I obviously not paying any attention to her at all.
Okay.
It's only
All right.
20% of the group.
That's right.
Okay, so the question is,
Question is, what advice do you have for other
Okay.
writers?
one of my best pieces of advice is that I found in a cartoon by Jules Pfeiffer. Was this kid, 20-ish, said he wanted to be a writer. Writers get to be on television. Writers get to be interviewed. Writers get lots of money and get to go to France. And writers get lots of women. So I wanted to be a writer. And so I signed up for a creative writing class. And the first thing the teacher says is, if you want to be a writer, read. read good stuff, read bad stuff, but read. Who knew it would be that hard, he says. So I signed up for math instead. Reading is, you know, if you're not going to write, if you're not involved in writing, read. To read as a writer. If this is affecting you somehow, figure that out. Why is it affecting you? If it's making you angry, how come it's making you angry? If you suddenly have tears on your face, why? If your heart's beating fast, figure it out. Why is your heart beating fast? What is that author doing that's having this effect on you? And I'd learned that late in my writing career. I think it's great advice. It's helpful.
Don't you find that you read much differently after you start writing, though?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes I have to like try to close off that part of my mind so that I can just enjoy a book instead of analyzing and reading it very differently.
Yeah. But yes, and as a writer, I stumble so much on crap, on badly written stuff that stops me, and so my problem as a writer is that I can't read much anymore because I just can't stand so much of the stuff because I want to be treated better and I'm not being treated better. So the worst thing I can do as far as this author is concerned is stop reading. Yes, I'm depriving myself of a fascinating ending, but oh well.
So,
Okay, Miss June.
what advice do I have?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Love your advice, taking a class. Since I teach classes, I love that advice. I've taken loads and loads of classes myself. And I did take the Stanford Novel Certificate Program. Did you take that one?
I only took one
A
class.
couple classes, yeah. So that's an excellent program, and I like being on the other side of the desk and being a student. It helps me as a teacher then to kind of know better what the students really need and want.
Mm-hmm.
And reading, so important, and how I read is so different now, and I can't read just for enjoyment anymore. But the other thing that I think is really important for writers is to join a writing support group. But it has to be the right kind of one for you. So it's a little bit like AA. That they recommend you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Well, you can't really go to 90 writing support groups because there aren't that many very close by. But you can try a lot of different writing groups. I belong to 5 writing groups. And one of them is here in Auburn, Gold Country Writers. And we have 75 members now. And we have a reading group also inside our writing group. And we have lots and lots of wonderful services like critique groups and speakers and like contests and lots of things.
The fact that there's
the important thing though is you need to get a group of people that are supportive and tactful and caring about not ripping you to shreds. Some writing support groups are poison.
That's all.
Yeah, but you want them to be honest and helpful, like your beta readers, but also very tactful, and so it's a tricky balance sometimes.
To receive tactful criticism, you have that is you can hear the tact, but as long as you hear the criticism too,
right?
That's important,
Right?
Critique, not criticism.
Critique. Okay, yeah.
And one of the groups I was in, I always found myself driving home afterwards thinking, what does she know? And I'd be all mad and wake up in the morning and go, oh, she's so right.
Yeah. It's hard to take. You have to develop kind of a thick skin as a writer. I think new writers have to get used to that. They really feel hurt and insulted, but it's actually a gift, such a gift to get that critique. Well, you do it with your editing.
Yes,
wonderfully.
yes, thank you. What do you mean by this? I don't get it.
Well, and I have a book in progress that I was so sure was done. I'd gone through 3 or 4 beta readers, and a guy read it for me here in Auburn, and he had this idea, and he said, no, the story is missing this component, it needs to be added, and he was so spot on. And I was like, oh, that's going to make it a
shoot.
way better book, but now I have to rewrite it.
Work.
Right.
More work.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What's the best part of writing? it's getting it finished. Getting it finished. Sometimes I think that the words are already there. I just have to find them. They're
Yeah.
looking at this blank piece of paper. I have 800 words to write, and all I have to do is find them. They're there someplace.
Mhm.
But the best part of writing is getting it done and doing it well. We know about our darlings, killing our darlings, and killing our darlings tend to attract attention to themselves, and that's not what you want your writing to do. You want to continue to tell the story and have people sail on that rather than the bumps that might be the darlings. Whoops, sorry. I'm bumping over my darlings. But the best part of writing is finishing. Is getting the idea, doing it, and finishing. And then of course, occasionally one gets a compliment, and that's fun. Okay.
For me, the best part of writing is the experience of being in the flow when it comes. So the hard part is to make myself sit down every day and face that laptop if I don't know what I'm going to do. So it wasn't it Hemingway that stopped in the middle of a sentence so that the next day he would know that
he had
his
something
job
to
was
do.
to finish that
Finish that
sentence.
sentence. I don't know.
So I love being in the flow when it's really rolling along, and I feel that the great poet. Well, now I can't think of his name. It'll come to me.
After
But what he said, he had 7 books of poetry out. William Stafford.
Okay.
William Stafford said. He had 7 books of poetry, and he was the National Poet Laureate. He said he would give up all of his published books of poetry for the experience of writing the next poem.
Wow.
So that's how
Okay.
I feel. Well, kind of as a poet also. It just kind of comes on you like a altered state of consciousness sometimes. The poem arrives, well, like you're looking for the words are there.
Yeah.
So that's what I love.
What I love the most is kind of this indulgence I have where I go and write on location. And
Yes,
so
you do.
this, my latest book, I went to Bandelier National Park in New Mexico. I camped for 2 weeks, got up every morning, wrote. My character was right there with me. Then we went for a walk, a hike in the canyon.
By we, you mean your character?
Me and my character.
Okay.
And then we went to the visitor center and we bugged the staff and said things like, in the year 1100, did they have a plant that tasted like basil here in the canyon? Or were the squirrels the same then as they are now? And that experience for me is the fun of the writing that I do.
Okay.
Going and being with my characters like that.
Yeah. I do also remember writing a column in which I was so angry that I don't remember writing it. It just, boom, came. And then I'm coming to an end. Oh, wow, there it is. My hands just worked and I was furious. It was about prejudice and bigotry. I was furious. Anyway, but that's fun. I did need editing because I needed to take out adjectives and names, but
Right.
And swear words.
yes, yeah.
Right. Oh, well, what's the hardest part of writing? I mentioned that the hardest part for me is just getting there, putting my seat in the chair, which is actually a stability ball for me, which is supposed to be good for your whole
Yes,
body
yes.
instead of sitting on a chair, sitting on one of those stability balls. So just getting there, starting in. If I can tell myself I'll just write for an hour, that's pretty manageable, and then usually it goes to 2 or 3 or even 4 hours. So,
So getting there.
but the habit, trying to develop a habit of being there every day. I never do it, but I'm always thinking about doing that. Trying
It's a
to,
goal.
thinking,
Okay.
yeah, it's like somewhere in the sky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard for me.
The hardest thing for me is revision because I overwrite. I write thousands and thousands and thousands of words, and they have to be whittled down. And it takes some organization to remember if you cut something out that you can't refer to it later. Which beta readers help with that too. They say, "What are you talking about?" And I tried. There's a thing called a pantser and a thing called a plotter. And it's, do you write by the seat of your pants or do you outline and write that way? And I've tried both, and if I'm too outlined, it takes all the fun out of it. It takes all the joy out of it. I like to let my characters take over. I like to just write.
Yeah.
But that
And they
requires...
do, don't they?
They do take over. But that requires a lot of revision.
Okay.
So.
What's the hardest part of writing? The thing that stops me usually is wondering how I'm going to get from this last paragraph to the next. Transition. And it has to be, so it's hard for me to do that transition, but I want it to be easy for the reader to make that next step, to see where, if I'm in this next paragraph and it doesn't make any sense from where we were, that's a problem. And I want it to be easy. And I understand that certainly is part of rewriting. And so maybe I should just forget about transitions when I'm just doing something, starting something. But
There is an art to that, though, because when you read a new reader, sometimes they drag you through the transition. She walked to the door. She put her hand on the doorknob. She turned the doorknob.
Yeah.
You know.
Or the second reason it might be necessary to.
Yeah.
That's too wordy, and that you're not having any faith in the reader.
Yeah.
But the reader does need some help somehow, sometimes. Okay.
Let's see. Your turn.
Okay, my turn. I'm gonna cheat and look it up. Why do you write? Well, that's an easy one for me. I have so many stories in my head, and I have had stories in my head since I was a little child, and I still vividly remember first grade, learning how to read, Mrs. Davis, my teacher, going home, and my dreams became written stories projected on the wall that I read. And since that time, I've had unlimited stories to write, and always working on the next one in my head. And I need to get those out. They need to they need to be expressed.
And you keep thinking of more.
Oh yeah. The funniest thing to me is when people hear you're a writer and they'll come to you and they'll say, "I have this really good idea for a story, and I'm not going to write it, but you can write it." And I'm like, "Oh no, that's you write that. I have plenty of ideas."
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Why do you write?
Why do you
Okay,
write?
I write because I can, because I'm good at it, because it's. I love seeing things in print. I love being able to solve problems. How do these characters do this when this is going on? And solving that problem is delightful. Yeah. Okay. I write because it's fun and I've got things to say. Most of the time it's fun. Sometimes it's hard work. Often it's hard work. But it's a great joy. June.
I write because I can't help it. It's just
But it's a job to sit down.
yeah. It's always, though, the desire is there, always desire there. And sometimes it's to write poetry, though. That's what actually kind of I used to have to get off the freeway and pull over because the poem was there and I had to write. So it's almost just, automatic writing or something.
I always wondered what those people who were getting across.
They're poets. They're the poets.
Right. So it's kind of like a seizure almost, a joyful seizure of it just comes to you. And then, but my poems I realized later, because I wasn't raised in a storytelling family, so I realized later my poems most of them wanted to be stories. So it's been very challenging for me to learn to write stories because of the need for conflict. Because I was raised in a house where we weren't allowed to have any conflict. And I was just a goody two-shoes. And so it's been wonderful learning how to write conflict.
Yeah.
So therefore, since I was raised in a family with lots of conflict, then that's why.
Yeah.
Too funny.
Sometimes we go opposite and sometimes we go the same. Yeah.
So the question is, why do you write? No. What was the question?
That was the question. Why do you write? I think we've all answered.
Yes. Okay.
We almost used all the questions.
What's the best advice? Do we have time? What's the best we have 2 minutes.
I will quickly answer that and say that when you mentioned at the Gold Country Writers that we needed to keep our readers in mind, you really stressed that. And that hit me and stayed with me because originally I had just been writing for myself.
Yeah.
And I still write for myself in many regards, but that was important, Susan.
Because if
more and
your
more
reader
I do
isn't
that.
interested,
Try to
there's
appeal
so
to
much
the
else
reader.
going on. You want to keep that reader there. Yeah. And granted,
So
everything else is vital, but okay. What's the best? I don't know. Write, read, write.
I thought we answered that one.
Yeah.
Put it back in.
Yeah. Write. If you want to be a writer, write and read and belong to a writers group. But the more you write, the better you get. That's just like anything, I believe.
A little pin that I have. My husband was a journalist.
Excuse me. Robin, quickly. We have 1 minute. What's the best advice you've received?
That I've received. I don't take other people's advice.
Okay. All right.
My husband gave me the best advice of all. I was stressing about marketing my work, and he said, "You're doing this for joy and pleasure. Only do the parts you like."
Okay.
That was the best advice I got.
And your husband's pen?
He was a journalist and he gave me a little enameled pin of a keyboard that said, "Write hard, die free."
Okay. So my guests have been June Gillam, and Robin Martinez Rice. And I'm Susan Rushton, and we're all three writers, and we drive ourselves crazy. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again.